Hey everybody, welcome back to Goju Tech Talk. Testing the chat. Chat's working. All right. I apologize for the delay. Today has been one of those days. Now, before we dive into all the crazy cool stuff, I've got a ton of things to show you. Like, where did this come from? Why does my video look a little strange? And what is this thing over here? Nodeka. Yeah. We're going to have some fun with this thing. So, but before we get into all... How do we get back? Oh, got to click back. So before we get into all of this stuff, I want to start with our typical music thing, as we do. And big shout out to Dream Clinic. Dream Clinic. I love you guys. Hey, Yanar. Yanar? Welcome. If you haven't listened to Dream Clinic, I strongly recommend them. And Inquisitor is maybe my favorite. Okay. That aside, the next thing is, does my video look different? It probably does. And I apologize for that if it doesn't look quite right. That's because this guy, my former webcam, decided just before starting this to bomb out on me and decide that it does not any longer want to show the color blue, and everything is basically red. Now, to make matters worse, this is the second time this particular webcam has died on me in the last month. So this is the second one I bought, because the first one also died right before a stream, and I had to kind of delay things. So I ordered this, but then I also, as I do, I ordered an additional webcam, and that's the one we're using right now. But I didn't have time to configure it, so the colors and whatever, you're getting these weird trails with my, I don't know if you guys can see that, but I'm getting like these black trailer things for my hair, whatever. It is what it is. It's like good enough. I don't think we're here to look at me so much as to talk about interesting, complicated things. So my advanced apologies that the color gambit is all wacky and it's not looking quite like me and it's flickering or whatever. We'll get that fixed for the next video. It just is makeshift stopgap for now. But not super thrilled that this is the second time this one has... I actually have the other one around here. Maybe I'll grab it in the break and show you these side by side. And neither of these work now. So next to go, you got some quality assurance stuff you guys need to sort out. Hopefully you can figure that out. I am now off of the Next to Go brand. So I gave you guys 2 tries and you failed. And so now we are going with a more trusted brand, which is Logitech. And it was, I think, a little bit more expensive and doesn't even have all the features as the Next to Go. The Next to Go has like a remote and stuff, which is really cool. But ultimately, and interestingly enough, I think this is a great demonstration of how important quality is. That you can have all the features in the world, but if you don't have a good degree of quality, it just doesn't matter. Which leads us into our whole vibe coding thing. Is, as I think many of you know, I'm not anti anything really without good justification. And I try to really see the upside of lots of things. And so I've been fiddling around with vibe coding. And as I mentioned before, I don't use it for production quality systems because I think that's a pretty bad idea. But I think that around production quality systems, there tends to be a lot of work that you can dabble in and build these systems that are helping you with your production quality systems, which is how I'm using this. Is we have our main channel, right? Goju Tech Talk. But there's many things around GTT that we have to do. And one of them is the thumbnail generation. And so I think you saw last time I had it with just one image and then I extended it. Now it shows multiple images. You can click on the images and it zooms in so you can see it. You can click off it and then so you can kind of go through these, right? And then on top of that, there's this save button that I added. So it'll save all the images all at once. And then I can click this button and it will regenerate. It'll create an entirely new batch, essentially of the same theme. And I can just see what it does. And as we're discussing before, the way that it's coded-ish is it does these things asynchronously. So it's fairly fast. And you can see that this thing is doing its thing. And then I think as I was discussing maybe last time, I'm not a big believer of this whole prompt engineering, whatever thing, but I am of the mindset of doing things like meta prompt prompting, maybe we'll call it meta prompting. We'll call it meta prompting. So I interface with the AI interfaces with another AI. I tell the AI to construct the prompt itself, and I give it the parameters, and then it figures out all the fancy, cool things to say and sends that off to another AI. So it's meta prompting, and I'm going to do that here. So we'll say, change the prompt to make all images of women, not men. And by the way, I asked it to generate both women and men, but for some reason it's just creating men. So now I'm going to try to have it change it so it'll do all women, just so we can see. Oh, and by the way, this is another cool thing. Again, it's kind of interesting because if you're a coder, I can see the benefits of fiddling around and hacking on this and having it kind of like do a lot of the scaffolding and fiddling so you don't have to deal with it, but it consistently breaks stuff, right? We'll get to this in a second. Actually, I'll see if it can fix this on its own. And I've seen it struggle with this, so I know what this problem is. But again, if you're not a coder, you may struggle with this. But if you look at the code and you scroll through this, so we're 300 lines of code now. And so it's getting bigger and bigger. We'll probably by the next episode, maybe 500, 600. And you can see how this is starting to get a little bit unruly. And it is doing some stuff like functions and things, which is great. But this code is not production quality code. So this is not stuff that I would ever put into production, but it is useful, I think, for sort of like a toy. And that's what this is. It's just a toy that's helping make me faster, helping me automate away some of the minutia that I'd have to do manually. And that's great. But you can see here that it gets confused and it's giving me responses now inside of the code that it's generating rather than switching to the other pane and responding there. So you can see that it's like finished, and then it thinks that it's communicating back to me on this prompt over here, but it's not. It's actually in the code. So we know this, and I can just delete this code, but let's see if I can get the AI to fix it. So, and by the way, this is not the first time I've had to deal with this. I have had to deal with this many times. Remove the trailing garbage you added. Stop making new coding mistakes. That's not the first time it did it. Remove the updated below text from the preview of the app. Fix the app. Remove the response in the preview window. No, your response to my question is in the preview. Like, it keeps doing it. This is not a one-off. So let's see if I can get it to remove it again. Remove the trailing text from the code you've generated that is meant to be a response to me. Okay, let's see if we can fix it. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe this time we'll get lucky. And if not, then I'll just delete it myself, and then it'll clean it up. But again, if you're not a coder, you may not. All right, so did it fix it, or did it actually make it worse? It's worse now. And it didn't give me anything because it's giving the response now actually in the code. And yeah, it's off in Never Never Land. So that's okay. We know that it's done. We will just delete this, and now it's fixed, right? But again, not a coder, might not know what's going on. All right, so now we changed the prompt, or we had our system, our AI, change the prompt for us. So we're meta prompting now, which, by the way, I think is the right way to do this, because if you're meta prompting, then you can feed this into many different AIs, and those AIs can then construct the various prompts that they want. Okay, so I think all right. It did, I think, sort of do what I asked it to do. I'm cool. Continues to fumble with this. But hey, vibe coding. Got to kind of, like I've said, it's not meant for production stuff. It's more of a toy thing. It can be useful as long as you can tolerate sort of the ineptitude of it. And again, it's messed this up, but that's okay. We can just keep doing this. Now, what's tricky is, like, some of these mistakes, it's not learning. And so oh, that's a bummer, right? I went to delete that, and now it's wiped out all the images. So yeah, there's stuff, right? And also what makes this a little bit tricky is it's not learning from its mistakes, right? So it's making this mistake over and over. And it's almost like every time I'm prompting it now, it just sort of forgets what it's doing. Okay, cool. So now we have women, and they no longer have goatees. That's pretty cool. Okay. And we actually got a little bit lucky here. It looks like most of the women here have exactly two. Let's rephrase this. They do not have 3 arms. Nope. Here's one. There we go. just when I thought it didn't have 3 arms, because this is something that at least this AI likes to do. And it's not just the women, it's sort of any person. It likes to have, it just wants to have a lot of helping hands or something, right? I feel like I've drifted off in a Taylor Dolezal bad pun. But yeah, so this is still a thing. But I don't know. In some ways, I'm kind of amused by it and think it's fun. But I'm going to start... Whoa, that's... There's some stuff that we need to sort out. But before each one of these episodes now, before it, I'm probably going to generate a new image from my thumbnail generator and then change the background. So we have something fun to look at if we have to shrink this up because it's creating like a little bit too much brightness on us, and we're all going blind. All right, so that's the state of my thumbnail generator, and it's continuing to evolve. Obviously, there's a ton of bugs, and this goes back to what I was saying before. Vibe coding, cool if you're fiddling around, building prototypes, and you're okay generating a whole bunch of code that is just sort of throwaway, and it's going to break in a gazillion different ways, but it'll get you more productivity than if you had nothing. Right. And that's really the core thing for me, is that without this thing, I don't really have much. I just have basically me taking a screenshot of the VOD and then dropping that as the thumbnail. So that's helping me with these things. Like this one, and I did one over here, I did one over here. So it's cool. It's for what I'm using it for. I think it's quite helpful, and it's pretty fast. And again, this is the beauty of the stochastic systems when used in the space of soft science, where the space is mostly open for interpretation. That there's no clear, definitive, this is right, this is wrong. Like, I don't know. I think that looks cool. It's better than what I might have otherwise. And if it helps inspire people to think about the way I kind of think about code, like I'm kind of doing this, I think that's great. Yeah. So there you go. There's our vibe coding thing. I just wanted to give a quick update on that. And now we're going to spend the rest of the stream, I think, all around how I built Nodeka. Nodeka is the online game I started creating in 1999. And then for the next 7 years or so, maybe from 99 to 2007, maybe 2006, I was working on it quite a bit. And for the most part, I built like the core system and the core infrastructure pretty much entirely by myself. After running Nodeka for maybe 5-6 years, I was able to convince one of the players, Wim, or Dwight, as I know him in real life, to help me with various things, building. And so I think Dwight started as maybe a builder. Maybe I made him the world builder. And then he's a super avid gamer, and I think he was learning to code. I was spending time kind of ramping him, mentoring him on coding. And then he got to the point to where I think he had enough confidence in himself, and so did I, that then he started working on Nodeka. And he's the only other person that I believe I ever had fiddle with directly with the Nodeka code. And he built the Nodeka crafting system entirely on his own. That's entirely Dwight. So the whole crafting system, that is all credit to Dwight's amazing skills. I think he did a truly fantastic job with the crafting system, far better than I would have done. And I would just want to give credit where credit's due. But prior to, or the crafting system aside, what I think is somewhat unique maybe about Nodeka is that almost everything else with the code I built. Now, I want to also give credit where credit's due. A lot of the players and people that I promoted into Nodeka staff helped build the world. And the way it's designed is I built like an area builder and a room editor, and there are item builders, monster generators, all that stuff. And so I think while I'm responsible for the overall world, as far as the the world of Nodeka and the continents and things. Like these are just various screenshots from players walking the world and showing you, like, this is what the islands of Drael, and so there's a lot of water, and then there's some of these continents here, and then this is the continent of Gadaean, where each one of these question marks that you see in here, these are like areas. These are full areas. So I think this one right here, let me see. Yeah, one of these is the core town of Rashi, and then some of the nearby question marks are like sort of these early areas for new players, and then as you get further along and out in the distance, it starts to get a little more scary and dangerous. And then as you leave this continent, let's see, hold on, what does it say here? This is I6. Oh, where's Rashi in here? Rashi I5. I5. Oh, okay. Yeah, Rashi is right here. I think that's Rashi. Yeah, my bad. That makes sense because these bars here are basically blocks. So there's like one way into these areas. Whereas Rashi, I was like, I thought you could enter Rashi from all sides, and you can. So we can get into more details on this. This also, by the way, this is a design decision. So while it may seem as though I'm just showing you a world map, the way I design this is a design decision because the continent is an area, and then areas that go onto continents are then usually they are set up to where they're a single space, and then they expand to something much bigger. This is a really important point, I think, because it's not like the real world where this area, like if this was a city, you'd have to drive past the whole city or walk by the whole city. You can move past the city in like 2 steps or whatever, and then you step in and it's going to be huge. Again, design decision. Now you don't have to do it this way, but in my head, this kind of made sense because I wanted people to travel sort of like speed travel across the continent to get to places, and then once they get there, they go in, and then boom, they're in this massive space. And so these are the kinds of things, as you're designing a game, you'll likely need to make decisions. Is this the right decision? Just kind of depends, I think, on the game that you want to create. For me, I kind of like this idea, and I didn't like the idea that there'd be one world where everything is like fully expanded, because I had a hard time wrapping my head around the players speed walking between, or speed traveling between these places if they have to walk without being able to like teleport in. And keep in mind, some players, some of the classes, they do have things like teleport. So I think maybe warlocks and other classes, they can literally just teleport to places, but not all classes have that ability. And so if I make it so that teleport is basically the super spell in the game, I think it raises some questions about, well, what about all the other players? So you can see how already we haven't even started to dive into how to build the game, how a simple design decision, such as having the areas be enterable and then they expand, but being able to walk to them in a relatively short clip. And keep in mind, this is only one of many continents. Some of the continents are pretty far away. Like, I think if we maybe go down, okay, maybe, yeah, I suspect if you log in and start playing Nodeka, you'll see more details on this. So yeah, Gidane is one of 5 continents, and it has over 100,000 rooms. It's probably more like 250,000 at this point. I think it has over 100 areas. It's pretty big. It's a pretty big place. Think of Elden Ring, and then yeah, it's probably larger than that. Probably, yeah, notably larger than that. I'm not necessarily saying that it's like richer than that. I think Elden Ring is one of the best RPGs maybe I've ever played in my life. But Nodeka, when it comes to its just size of things, it's pretty enormous. Like let me give you an example of what I mean. And by the way, this is also a design decision. Is that one of the things that I really wanted to do with Nodeka is I wanted to build a role-playing game that was very rich. And by rich, what I mean is here. This maybe gives a little insight into what I'm kind of talking about. So these are, I think, it might be more than this now. We'll have to, we can log into the game at some point and check this out. But these are the races for Nodeka. So the base race that you choose when you create your character is any one of these. Human, dwarf, elf, half-elf, gnome, hobbit, drow, troll, pixie, undead, cloud giant, frost giant, red drake, blue drake, were-tiger, gargoyle, black drake, gael, onilin, tho, giraffe, fair. Then when you remort, your first remorting, you can be, you kind of level up, and some of them, they split in different directions. Like if you're human, you then choose if you're going to be a demon or an angel. And then as you go into major remort, then you become an archangel or a demonikos. And then similarly, if you're an elf, you can be a green elf or gray elf. And then you can go to be an elven guard or silver elf, right? And then if you're drow is just when you minor remort, you're drow, the blue blood. And then as you go to the major remort, you can be a dark elf or a veldrick. So those are the only ones that have splits for the races. But as you remort, you become essentially more powerful. So a very simple transition is like frost giant. So you start as a frost giant, then you become titan of ice, and then you become an arctic colossus. And as you remort, your race becomes more powerful. So you want to like remort. And the way that it's designed, I think, is each remort tier, so non-remort, remort, minor remort, major remort, this is 100 levels, this is 100 levels, this is 100 levels. So in total, you have 300 levels that you can level up to. That's the cap. But most of the stats in the game, as all the core attributes and the stats, they don't have upper bounds, which basically means that you can play Nodeka for forever, and some people have been. So some people literally have been playing Nodeka for, I don't know, like 20, 25 years since it was created in around 2000, 1999. So this is what I mean, though, about like size, is that this is just the races. So there's 71 total playable races, if you look at it this way. Then hopefully there's, let's shrink this back down. What is this? Okay, this isn't showing the full class list, but here's an example of one of the classes. So there's a total of 100. So we saw the races. There's like 70 races. I think it's more than that now. And then the total classes, there's 126 classes. Again, just to talk about the scale. And this is, I did this on purpose because I wanted Nodeka to be rich. I didn't like, as I think I've mentioned in the past, I didn't like that a lot of the D&D games that I was playing at the time were just like fighter, thief, cleric, and magic user. mage or whatever. I mean, those are cool, but I just felt like we could do more. So I took something as simple as a sorcerer, and then the minor remort is just an elemental sage. But then when you go to major remort, for any of the classes, they split into 5 different categories. So any class, so we looked at the races before, now we look at classes. The classes, when you get to major remort, they all split into 5 different classes. And each one of these have different skills and spells. Some of them have unique skills and spells, meaning they're the only class in the game that gets a particular skill or spell. And that's on purpose. So it's meant to basically be like, if I think like Planar Sage, for example, might have some spell that allows it to travel in a way that no other class, including other sorcerer classes, can cast. So Planar Sage is the only one that gets this. Thus, if you want access to that skill or spell, either you're a planar mage or one of your buddies is a planar mage. So you have to decisions, right? Again, on purpose. Oh, by the way, this alignment restriction thing it's basically saying, and some of these are interesting and strange. Oh, yeah, here's an example. We'll see an example of this shortly, what this means. We're talking about the unique skills and spells. So this yellow is an example of something that's unique in that this Frostbladed Sorcerer, so Frostbladed Sorcerer, this last one, it is the only class in the game that gets this spell, Blue Invocation. It's the only one. No other class in the game gets this. So if you want Blue Invocation, you better be these guys. Now, these green ones are essentially, they're new to the tier, meaning if you were before, when you weren't a Frostbladed Sorcerer, when you were just back to an elemental stage, you didn't have these spells. So the green ones are sort of, okay, these are new ones just for this tier. Now, some of the other classes may have these. So, for example, the Step of Phasing and Plane of Safe Housing, I'm fairly certain Planar Sage is going to get. But the point of this is to continue explaining the richness part, the depth, is that was a core thing that I wanted, right, directionally when I was building the game. And I knew that from the get-go. And so these are 2 embodiments of me doing that. The other thing I really wanted in terms of richness is I wanted a lot of skills and spells, a ton. And keep in mind, I was doing this back in, I started this back in 2000. Well, 1999, something like that. But the games in 2000 were not like, at least the ones I was playing, they weren't like Path of Exile or some of these other ones where you have these massive skill trees. And I like the massive skill trees. I think that it's complicated to do this the right way. So there's the Epoch game, whatever that one is. This Epoch, what is that Epoch game? Yeah, Last Epoch I think has massive skill tree, but or maybe not massive, but it's fairly detailed, and I think it's actually pretty cool. And then Path of Exile 1, I think, is enormous. Path of Exile 2 is also pretty big. And I kind of like that. It's just that it can be a little bit overwhelming for people that are casual players because they have to kind of wrap their head around what all these things mean and how do I know I'm making the right decision. But similar decisions were being made for Nodeka. I wanted an arsenal of things to pick from. And then back when Nodeka was first created, one of the things that I thought would be very cool is this idea that you could use a skill or spell, but then you couldn't use it again for some period of time. Now, in today's day, we call this cooldowns. We call them cooldowns, that you use it and it has a cooldown period. Well, when I was creating Nodeka, as far as I know, there was no cooldown thing. It didn't exist in games. But I thought it made sense. And I think that those of us that have played games that have cooldowns, I think it does make sense, right? It's like, it's the super weapon, but you can only use it once every 30 seconds. So better be sure and don't miss, right? Anyway, almost all of these more powerful skills and spells are cooldowns, but because cooldowns didn't exist, I don't call them cooldowns. On Nodeka, we call them preventions. And that's me just thinking, well, you use it and then you're prevented from using it for some time. And so on Nodeka, you type prev, and prev will list your preventions and it'll tell you the cooldown period. So if you log into Nodeka and you want to understand about cooldowns, just read up about preventions. And again, part of that is the word cooldown, at least to my knowledge, didn't exist in games, or not the games that I was playing, but I liked the idea of being able to use something and then not being able to use it for some period of time. There's many other things that I was building into Nodeka that I think kind of didn't exist at the time. And I think that's something that you can explore if you're building a game. There may be, like, if you're watching this thinking you want to build your own game, you may have ideas in your head of like, oh, well, there's something that I think would be really cool. It hasn't been done before. That's awesome. Maybe build that thing. One of the other things that didn't really exist in MUDs at the time were dynamic maps. Is that the maps would be either static or there would be no visual map, no overhead map. It would just be all text, right? And I wanted some sort of overhead map. And I thought that you could do it, and it was not easy to do. But then with some effort, I was able to figure out how to build this thing so you could have this overhead map. Again, keep in mind, this is 2000, right? So, and what you're seeing here is like it's like Windows 95 or something, right? It's pretty awesome. What you're seeing is a graphical client that one of the players built that reads in through a special port in Nodeka that gives this client the interface of everything related to the map, and then he just parses that out and then creates this graphical representation. Now, you don't need this system to show the graphical map. Nodeka will show it to you just on its own if you're just using the game, if you're just playing the game without it. Like here, this is essentially just using Zmud, and this is the map that you would get, which at first might seem a little hard to understand and parse. Like, what is all this stuff? Very quickly, what I can tell you is that this thing is you. So this pound sign is you. The exclamation points are going to be like NPCs, I believe. And if you see these yellow NPCs, it means so this is a mob, and I think they're not aggressive. If you see a red exclamation point, I think that means like this guy might be coming for you. And then I think if you see a question mark, what is it? Question mark is a new area, and I think $ is quest, is a mob that has a quest on it. So anyway, the point is that you don't need the graphical client to get the map. You can do it all through the ASCII art. So the ASCII art. And this is all configurable, right? Again, I really wanted it to be a super rich experience. And so you can see like the players, these are just actual screenshots of players. So this is this player, Seraphim. And all the colors that you see here, like he's just set this up himself. So he's turned it to this pink background, and he's colorized this and this and this and this. He's made this invisible. Like this actually says stuff here, but he's like, I don't need to see that stuff. Turn it off. And then, so here's Nodeka saying, do you not like these colors? That's cool. Read about this. And then you can change. So Nodeka has this built-in hint system in the score sheet that will like give you stuff. It'll give you clues and it'll say various things. So another example, just to look at someone else's score sheet so you can see. So here's someone else's score sheet. And this guy's done like another colorization. So the point, going back to the richness, is I really, and this probably is not very surprising to those of you that are watching GTT, is I like things that are nuanced. I like things that are rich. I don't like things that are superficial and like one-dimensional. And so I was probably not going to build a game that was going to be that. It was going to be a bunch of cerebral things that are going to take you down a path of a lot of confusion and strategy and this kind of thing. So this is sort of what you get is, so you have your class, your race, your handedness, your sex, your level, your alignment, your age, your practices. Then there are 8 core attributes: strength, constitution, dexterity, agility, intellect, wisdom, willpower, speed. All of these are important. Every single statistic in the game is important in a very critical way. And that's why you can see that any of the very senior players, they're basically capped. If you'll see 300s across the board for them, that's what I call the natural cap of the stats in Nodeka. That's not the actual cap, that's the natural cap, meaning if you, without augmenting and using other advanced things, you're going to stop at 300, but you can get beyond 300. And then similarly, there are like the level is a hard cap. So he's actually level 300. This is the 3rd tier, non-remort, minor remort, major remort, and he's level 100 for being a major remort. And then, yeah, there's a bunch of other things. And we have some of his skills. Again, all of this colorization, almost all of this he's done this himself. And I really wanted, again, similar thing here. Yeah, so you can see this guy, he's decided I want it to be borderless. And so no border. Border's gone. And he's like, I want all of this to just be like this sort of low yellow and then everything else. So yeah, hopefully this gives you a sense of maybe the kind of care and attention that I gave building Nodeka. These are all things that I thought as a player I would want. Is if I'm going to play a game and sort of dedicate my life to it, I probably want a large degree of customization. And then I started adding in a whole bunch of other sort of wacky things, like the data sheet, which is allowing players to keep track of how many kills they have, essentially. So the NPCs, so this guy has been super lucky. I mean, obviously very skilled, but to not ever have a single NPC death, that's pretty hard to do. But then you can see Nodeka is also a PvP game. The player versus player stuff is not super bad though. It's more just an ego thing. And a lot of players get super upset if they get beat up by other players. And so they really like this. They really don't like this stuff over here. And some of them have asked if they can buy their way to zero out these things. But anyway, this just gives you more insight into some of the richness of Nodeka, the stuff. And we have, like, this is the equipment. And in the equipment, when you look at the equipment or you look at a player, it shows you their description. So he this player, Thistonius, he built this, which is pretty cool, ASCII art. And then this is all of the equipment that he's wearing. And you can see that here. These words that preface the item, these are all levels of modification that's giving you an indication of how powerful the item is in terms of its being augmented. And in Nodeka, it talks about the different tiers. So you don't know exactly what this means in terms of like what is it giving you pluses on, but you do have a sense of how powerful it is based on the word. So for example, I think flickering is not that powerful, but once you get to something like sparkling or gleaming, it's like up there, meaning you can look at the word and be like, this is a pretty, I don't know exactly what this does, but we should ID this and take a look. Or shining, I think shining is actually a pretty powerful one. And doing things like that I thought was kind of fun because I wanted to have uniqueness in the items, even the sort of commodity items. This is often done through various like gems and sockets and things today in games like Path of Exile or Cyberpunk or Elden Ring, that you can augment, that you can add the sockets, you add the mods, different things like that to make them more powerful. How did we do this with Dwight's crafting system? I can't remember if we added sockets. I think we didn't, but there were ways that you could essentially level up items and craft sort of one-off items. But these could be regenerated, re-augmented, as long as you had one of these stones. But one of the tricks is that when you go to re-augment an item, you don't know if it's going to make it better or worse. And that was on purpose, is that it's a gamble. So if you take this item and maybe you think, well, this lantern, it's only flickering, that's kind of not great, I'm going to roll the dice and see if I can make it better, you might make it worse. You like the way that it's designed, I don't think it would ever destroy the item, but it could actually make the item not as good. So this would cause people to pause or have a backup, that then they would teeter between the two and be like, okay, I've got this one that's high level and I don't want to mess with it, but I think I can do better. So now I'm going to get a backup and I'm going to fiddle with this one. And if I can get this one leveled up, then I'll keep this one. Then I'll fiddle with this one. And you can see how this becomes like revolving door or moving goalposts. It also, I think, creates a really interesting dynamic in the game, is that it's not just about having a single item anymore. Oftentimes, you might want that super powerful item multiple times because you want to play this game. And yeah, so having sort of random elements, I think, are pretty cool. At least it was cool for me. And then here's some of the stuff that I was talking about with customization. And again, part of the reason why I'm doing this is mostly just to give you a sense of how I had an idea of, at least directionally, the types of things that I wanted to do with Nodeka before I ever started. And I didn't know exactly how all these things would pan out, but I knew that I would want the players to be able to control these things. And part of the reason why I wanted them to be able to do it is I'm a player myself. What I try to do is I put myself in their shoes and I think, as a player, would I want this? And then I think, yeah, I want this. I want to be able to colorize this stuff. I want to be able to do compression. So for example, with output, you can show the output in the expanded form, which is like this. This is expanded output form. This kind of looks like, yeah, this is expanded, so you can see individual attacks. And then this is, no, this is also expanded, I think. Whoa, yeah. This dude is dominating on people. Like he is. Yeah, there's some pretty wacky skills and spells in Nodeka. Is this compressed? This is compressed. All right, so this is compressed. Let me walk you through what's happening here, just so you can get a sense of how compressed this is. Keep in mind that this is what the, sorry. Was that? Yeah, I don't like that one. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's... Okay, this one's maybe a little bit better. This is uncompressed output for the user's attacks and misses and things. But this is compressed output for the opponent. So here you can see, if we now go back to this one, the output, you can see how it's like brief when I miss, brief when I'm dodged, brief, all this stuff. And then it can be like compress enemy attacks, compress general, compress mine. So it can do all of this stuff. So what we had seen before in the other one, by the way, what it means by brief when I miss, dodged, evade, parried, it basically means I don't want to see it. Don't even show it to me. I'm not interested. And the reason why they may not be interested is that all of these don't do damage. So if you miss, you're dodged, you're evaded, or parried, you did 0 damage. So oftentimes the players don't want to see this because they know that they're missing, to just like only show me when I'm hitting. And then similarly, they may have things for their clan or their group. They don't want to see that. And then also they may not want to see if their enemy is evaded, parried, missed, all this stuff, and so on and so forth. So you can see that that's basically what they want. And then they're compressing their enemy's attacks. They're compressing just general. They're compressing my attacks. And so this is going to be fairly compressed. Now, like fully compressed, I think fully compressed looks like this. So what's happening here, this is a single round of combat right here. And this guy is fighting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 monsters, I think, all at once. I think that's right. And you can see they're not hurting this player very much, Shumi. They're just tickling, and he's really unloading, at least on this red crane. But then he does this thing. Oh, it's a fury. So the fury is, he does this fury, and I think the fury is like, I'm just going to attack. It's just, I'm going to blast everybody. And you can see he's doing that. So he does this, and then bam, one of the red cranes, toast. That guy's out. Another red crane, out. Another red crane. So he just took 3 of them out. And then now you can see that the next round, this is the next round, is he now has 2 red cranes and the water buffalo. And then one of the red cranes is toast here. So we go back to the original, and he was fighting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red cranes and a water buffalo. 5 red cranes. So 1, 2, 3 red cranes are toast. That means there's 2 left. And then the 4th one. So now at the end of this one, there's basically only 2 NPCs that are still alive. The red crane and the water buffalo. Hopefully this gives you a sense. And so this is like the compression stuff. Now, what's interesting about these things, I think, or at least one of the things, is you don't have to have all this stuff built in from day one. You kind of just have to have like a sense that, oh, I'm going to build it like this. And so when I was first building Nodeka, I wanted it to be, there's going to be a bunch of attacks, and I wanted to do that because I wanted some attacks to be kind of pretty wimpy, and then some attacks to be maybe more powerful. And I didn't want it to be one attack that's like a big swing and a miss. I mean, for the most part, there are occasionally those things. Like if you look at the skills, that there's probably one skill in here that's really, really powerful. Like this one, maybe this concentration one, that's probably super tough. But a lot of them are things that you use more frequently. And by having a bunch of different attacks, you can support this kind of thing. Apologies if you're hearing a little dog chatter in the background. Merle has found a new person to threaten. Okay, so that's a little bit of the background on Nodeka. And this is the game that we'll probably be talking about as we're doing this series. You're welcome to go to the homepage and read about it. I actually just restarted the website because the game is up all the time, but the website goes down from time to time for some odd reason. But I've tried to put it back up in case people want to visit this so they can see things, like they can read about the races, right? So it'll talk to you about some of this stuff. This hasn't been maintained in a very long time, so it's not complete, but it'll give you some sense. And then, of course, you can log in and play the game, and you can get more detail. Okay, cool. So now going back to the preamble, the high-level preamble of things that I recommend you think about if you're on the quest of building your own game. And you do you. So if you have an idea of how you want to do this, you don't need to follow my advice. This is more just what I recommend. But these are some of the starting points before you start actually building the game that you're going to build. And again, this is just how I did it. You do whatever you think is best. Here's some high-level guidance that I have before you ever start writing any code. First, I would recommend that you master the genre of the game that you're going to create. And by master, I mean like you know this genre inside and out. The reason why I think that this is helpful is that if you don't know the genre like forwards and backwards, the likelihood that you're going to make a game that people are going to be super excited about, even yourself, is probably pretty slim. So spend the time, my recommendation, to play different games of the genre. Just get a sense of what's out there. Try to understand what's been done, what hasn't been done. Ask yourself questions and make sure that it's just like you've got this really grokked. That kind of think of it as maybe sports. Think of it as football or baseball. And if someone asks you a question about football or baseball, you just know, oh, it's 3 strikes for an out in baseball. Oh, it's 10 yards for a first down in football. You just like know these things at the top of your head. This, I think, can be really helpful because as you're starting to build your game, it will help you understand, I think, what you want to be building, the things that you really like, the things that you don't like. And I think it'll help you from not making major whiffs, major misses on certain design elements. More likely than not, you're going to get a lot of things wrong, but hopefully you're directionally correct, right? There's lots of things that Nodeka is not that I really wanted it to be, but directionally, I look at it now and think, yeah, it's kind of going in the direction and went in the direction that I wanted it to. And even 25 years later, I think, yeah, is it perfect? No, but is it something that I'm pretty happy about what it is? Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. And I think ultimately that's one of the most important pieces, is that you should be building a game that you love. I think people go, maybe, I don't know that I want to say wrong, but I think that something that is not good in terms of game building is building a game that you're building because you think other people will like it, other people will benefit from it or something. And I think it's hard to build a game like this because who are those other people? Like, what is this archetype? And does that person really exist? Whereas if you're building a game that you love, you can play it and say, no, this isn't quite right. Like, this is not what I intended, and I don't like the mechanics of this. You have a sense of how this should be, and that if it doesn't meet your bar, you keep iterating. Whereas if you're building for sort of this unknown archetype, it's hard, I think, to determine if that really is the game that that person, that pretend person, actually wants to play. Whereas if you're the archetype, you can say, yeah, this is really good, or this is really bad, and I need to keep iterating. Cool. So to take a step back, the point one is make sure that you master the genre. We talked about this. The second is, again, making sure that you understand directionally where you're going. What I mean by directionally is, you're like, I'm setting out to build like this Dungeons and Dragons game. Right? I think I say this somewhere, is that it's an online role-playing game. And yeah, it's meant to pay homage to Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a huge fan of the whole fantasy, magic and stuff genre, and that's the core thing that I'm building on and expanding. That was the direction. And then from there, as you go down that path, you're going to likely find things along the way. You're going to run into technical struggles that may limit your ability to do certain things, and you're going to say, well, the technology just doesn't exist to do this. I didn't know this when I was first creating the game, but now I know something, and so now I have to like pivot. These things will likely happen, and when they happen, you may need to go in another direction. And then after the directional piece, going back to this, making sure that it's a game that you'll love. This is, I think, really important, because you'll be able to critique it constantly and say, yeah, this isn't quite right. And then, as I think Asmund, Gold, and many other people say, one of the things that I think makes this super easy, but a lot of people miss on this quite a bit, is it's super easy, I think, if you remember that the game should be fun. Like, first and foremost, I think if the game isn't fun, you probably are not succeeding. You really need to make sure that it's something that people are going to like, including you. And it's easy to build a game that is complicated and has all the stuff, but the game mechanics, it's not enjoyable. And it's very hard to understand exactly what enjoyability is. I don't actually fully understand this. I don't know that anyone knows, but you can get I don't know that there's some sort of blueprint on these are the things that you need to do to make sure that the game is entertaining and fun. I think it changes based on the type of game that you're building and the audience. Like, for example, I'm big into doing side quests. I actually tend to like doing side quests more than I like doing the main quest, because my goal is not to beat the game, because I know that many games are designed to be beaten, and they're set up to be beaten. And then if I go down that path, I'll beat the game, and then the game's done. But if I really like a game, I kind of want to enjoy it for a while. I want to like sip on it kind of thing. So I do side quests. I'll do side quests until I get to the point where like, okay, I've really savored this. Now I'll just beat the game. That's sort of how I play almost all the games that I play. I did this with Elden Ring. I'm doing this now with Cyberpunk. And so I'm part of the group that really enjoys this. And if you know that your game is amenable to things like side quests and the side quests will be fun, then this is something that I think will be very entertaining for your audience. On the other hand, if you're doing something like, I don't know, like maybe a sports game where the primary thing for the sports game is playing the game, maybe the side quests in that environment are not that critical and might not be interesting to people. It might not be entertaining. So again, kind of knowing your audience, and if you are the audience, it just makes it easier. But this is super important that if you are not building a game that is fun, I think that no matter how sophisticated, complicated, whatever it is, I think people may not be interested in that. So keep this in the back of your mind. This is my recommendation. Again, if your goals are that people will play your game, then keep that in the back of your mind. Or if your goal is just that you'll play the game, then keep that in the back of your mind. Now, if you're trying to build a game where all you're trying to do is just learn how to code, and you don't care if people play the game, then by all means, like, don't worry about entertainment. However, I would argue that if you don't really care if the game is entertaining because you're just learning how to code, you could code a lot of other things than a game. I think it's kind of cool if you can level up multiple skills simultaneously. And that was sort of my goal. Is I wasn't just trying to hone my coding skills. I was also trying to understand game design and game mechanics and world building and how to build a quest system and building programming languages inside of programming languages. Like I have an AI programming language that I built that's several millions of lines of code in the mobs because it's so extensively used. Like these are things that are all relatively important to me and were related to the things that I learned. So it's not just the learning how to code. Okay, cool. So I think for our first pass, my goal was to give a preamble on how I built Nodeka and give you sort of a sketch of some of the things that I think are relevant before you ever start building the game. So hopefully you have a little bit of this now. And if you're curious about some of the high-level things with Nodeka, you can visit the Nodeka website. I'll have a link to it in the description. And then you can look at some of these screenshots to give you insight about some of the customization and stuff. You can log into the game. You can read about the basics. There's just, a bunch of things that you can probably glean from this that might give you maybe some inspiration or at least some high-level layout of how I've approached this. And maybe that gives you some ideas on how you can start sketching out the higher order architecture of what you're thinking about for your game. And then we can start getting into some of those details in the next video. In the next episode, what I plan to do is talk about once you have the idea and you know what you're going to build, so I'll use reference of Nodeka, then how you would think about the high-level components and how they're going to interact with each other. So how you're going to think about players and non-player characters, how you're going to think about the world, you're going to think about areas, monsters, items, and also the medium that you're going to use to interface with the game. So for Nodeka, one of the big things, it's online, and that was really important because I really wanted it to be a player versus player. I really like the competition element. So having it work on the internet is critical for the approach that I have, for the design that I had in my mind. And Nodeka, if it's played in single player mode, which you can do, I think it's probably not as fun. Just my personal take. But when played in multiplayer, I think that's where it starts to shine, because you can start to create groups, and you can go and the groups can fight other groups of players, and it has a highly like nuanced and complicated player versus player combat system. You can throw monsters in those player fights that make things even more complicated and wacky. And so things can start getting really strange and fun when you move outside of like the single player mode. But that's a really important thing to understand directionally from day one. If you're building a game that's single player, then that's probably going to influence the architecture and the design, and even what's going to be entertaining significantly, to where you're going to make massive design decisions and architecture decisions around that you likely wouldn't make, or you'd make different decisions if it was online or multiplayer, or offline co-op multiplayer, those types of things. Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. This was episode 1, Untranslatable Metaphor. Thank you for the idea. This is probably going to be very long series. I'll maybe try to chip away at doing one of these every week or something, and I'll try to just continue this stream, and we'll get deeper and deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. I'll also create its own podcast, so it'll be how I built a video game or something, and then all of the episodes will be there, so you can watch them serially, or you can quickly find them. I think, unfortunately, YouTube's search within channels is not super great. Like, I don't know why that's not better, but I'm trying to make that a little bit easier. So as we start to get more and more, I think we're almost at 500 videos on GTT now, and it can be a little bit much to try to track stuff down. So hopefully it simplifies this a little bit. Okay, thanks everybody. Hope you have a great 4th of July weekend and are safe if you're in the United States. If you're outside of the US, I hope you have a great Friday, or maybe it's Saturday where you are, and we'll be talking to you soon.